Everybody, welcome back to the Bird Rights Podcast. This is our 10th episode already. So this is episode 10. We're doing our NFL Conference Championship recap from the two games that happened over the weekend. And we're going to recap some of the news that's come since our last NFL podcast, anything that's happened in the NFL. I'm Zach Lambert, and I'm as always, joined by Declan Pollard, Jack Kovahay, and Tyler Bomsey, who is actually joining us live in Cancun. Tell us about it, Tyler Bomsey.
Guys, it's great down here in Cancun. I actually just had the pleasure of meeting Eli Apple and Joe Burrow in person to tell them how much they are awful football players and human beings. It was amazing. I'm so ready to talk about it. That's great.
Yeah, we love it. We love that the Bengals are going to Cancun. We're going to talk about that game a little bit later. But I guess we can start with our news roundup. We've got a lot to talk about here. I guess we can start with one of the more recent big news. The most recent big news that's come out of the NFL was the Chargers just hired Kellen Moore, or are about to hire Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. He was just let go by the Cowboys a few days ago, and he just immediately got scooped up by the Chargers. And I think this is going to be a really good fit. I think Kellen Moore and Justin Herbert are going to do some really good things together. So what do you guys think?
I it's never a great sign from the team that if really in any profession, it doesn't have to be football, but if you fire a guy and then less than 12 hours later he gets a job that's considered a better job, you probably shouldn't have fired that guy. Um, and I think they say that goes for here as well. The Chargers job is easily a better job than that Dallas job because McCarthy has a history of, he's clearly going to have a say in the offense, whereas in Los Angeles, Kellen Moore is going to have pretty much full control over how that offense is designed, and he gets to work with an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert and an offensive line that's young and has some good young pieces. They could use some reworking, but they have their left tackle and Rashawn Slater coming back. Eckler's obviously a nice weapon. I think they could use some retooling of that wide receiver room, but he has, as far as offensive coordinator jobs that are open, that was, I think, the best one easily. And I think if he does well with this group, which I think he will, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Kellen Moore as a head coach 12 months from now, really. Like I think this could be a 1 year thing. If he does what I think he's going to be able to do in LA with the Chargers, I think he'll get a head coach look somewhere next season.
I'm just honestly really surprised by it. Like, I don't think anyone really saw this coming personally. Like, maybe I thought he would get like a head coaching job or something, or at least get interviews from certain teams. But for the Cowboys just to let him go, like totally under their own will, it seems a little strange and a bit scapegoaty. Like he wasn't the one. Skip Bayless was tweeting in all caps last night about how upset he was about this move. Like he was saying that Kellen Moore wasn't the one that threw all those interceptions and wasn't the one that cost them the game in the end, at least in his assessment. And I would agree. And now Mike McCarthy's going to be calling plays or something. Apparently, I don't think anyone would consider that an upgrade. McCarthy is probably like double Kellen Moore's age, and he just doesn't really seem to have like a modern grasp on.
Oh yeah, grasp
NFL.
on how football is played in 2023.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
And this just seemed like an impulse move to me. And like you said, he got scooped up almost immediately. I've never seen someone get hired in the same position like that quickly after being fired from it. It was just like, it seemed like a no-brainer for the Chargers to try their best to get him. Seemed like he was all in.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think he kind of talking about Kellen Moore. I feel like, Tony Pollard's kind of, exploded under him. He's done really well. Zeke's obviously gotten older, but Dax looked really good under Kellen Moore. They were winning games with Cooper Rush at quarterback. So I think he's a really good offensive coordinator. And I bet all the Chargers fans are probably super excited about getting him in the building.
Dallas has the number one offense in the league the last 3 years. If you take them composite, and they've been top three every year Dak's been healthy. It's been a very successful West Coast scheme, and I think they're going to take that, and the Chargers are going to run a much more modern and interesting looking offense than the one they've been running under Joe Lombardi. And I'm excited to see how Justin Herbert looks with a competent play caller. But yeah, McCarthy's going to be calling the plays. And I got to be honest, McCarthy kind of feels overwhelmed with the duties he already has as head coach. You know, he has clock management problems, and it seems like he has trouble keeping track of all that. So now that he's going to add another thing to that and play calling, I'm not sure how I feel about that for Dallas. And maybe more importantly, Mike McCarthy is an offensive-minded head coach. If he had any problems with the offense this year, he could have at any point had say, yeah, taken over play calling or had more say in how the offense was structured, or just change things up on the offensive side of the ball, and he didn't do that. So it really does feel scapegoaty to me. Maybe part of it's Kellen Moore looking like, kind of like saying, hey, can I go look for another job? But it sounds like it was a firing. It doesn't sound like it was a Kellen Moore wanted out. It sounds like it was a, hey, we're moving on from you, not a other way around. So I feel like it's a really foolish decision. I honestly, if I'm Dallas, I would have rather fired McCarthy and promoted Moore to head coach than let Moore walk. I do not feel great about that at all.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how the Cowboys look next year, but it's not looking too good in that franchise right now after
Worse.
playoff game. Yeah. I guess we move on from this, talk about another coordinator, Ryan Nielsen, who was the Saints defensive line coach and co-defensive coordinator last year, was named the Falcons defensive coordinator. Honestly, I don't know much about Ryan Nielsen, but I know that the Saints have always had a pretty good defense. Dennis Allen's a really good defensive coach. And also the Falcons need all the help they can get on defense. So honestly, I feel like anything was an upgrade from what they've had the past few years. So hiring a guy from the Saints is probably a pretty good decision for them.
Yeah,
seeing
I
how
agree.
well they've had a defense, how good their defense has played the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've definitely mentioned to a couple of you guys before that the Falcons D is just one of those units in the league that just always seems to suck pretty much, like 9 years out of 10. And it's good for them to bring somebody new in. I also don't really know much about him, but as you said, they've had a pretty solid D, and if he's the co-defensive coordinator, it's good for them to bring in a new mind.
Yeah. Not much really to talk about when it comes to that because we don't really know much about him. But I guess we can move on to the Rams hiring the former Jets offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, who was, like I just said, the former Jets offensive coordinator. And I'm pretty sure he came from the Rams before the Jets.
Yeah, he had a relationship with McVay, I'm pretty sure.
So yeah, this hire makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, obviously Sean McVay is still going to be calling the plays and have most of the say in that offense, but sometimes you combine heads and you can get a little bit more creative stuff out there. I thought Mike LaFleur did a fine job with the Jets last year. It's kind of hard to hold too much against anybody calling plays for Zach Wilson, but I don't think the offense failed due to a lack of creativity from his part. More so, Zach Wilson miraculously evading sacks and then deciding, hey, I'm going to throw it to the wrong team real quick. But yeah, I think it's a good hire for the Rams. I thought maybe he'd look for a job where he'd have more power, where he because I thought one of these years, we'll talk about this coming up in a minute or two. But a lot of teams are looking for offensive coordinators, and I get that the Rams are a team where he's comfortable because of that offense and when he's worked with McVay in the past. But I thought maybe he'd go somewhere where he's kind of the mastermind of the offense as opposed to Sean McVay in this case. But maybe those options weren't out there for him. So it could be good. And who knows? Sean McVay has been toying with retirement for 2.5 years now. Maybe he thinks he's going to step away in a year or two, and then he's going to get the head coaching job or something like that, or at least he'll have an opportunity to maybe be the main voice in that offense kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a solid hire. I mean, I think, someone that was just play calling and now gets to just be a good offensive mind to have behind McVay definitely seems pretty valuable. And I think he used to be the passing coordinator for the Niners. That was his connection. to like with Shanahan and like going back to the former Redskins. So he seems to have a lot of experience under some bright football coaches. So I mean, yeah, I can't really blame the Rams for bringing him in. Seemed like a kind of a no-brainer if he was going to take that job, just like the Kellen Moore situation.
Yeah, and I feel like the Rams definitely have had their obviously they had their struggle last year, so it's good to bring in a guy who succeeded a lot with the 49ers. And then, like we said, pretty good job with what the Jets had to offer as an offense. So pretty good hire by them. We can move on here to the last big name coaching news, which was about right after the 49ers game ended. It was Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport tweeted that DeMeco Ryans was basically locked in to be the Texans' next head coach. It's not official yet, but it's like 99.9%. And I think we can all agree here that he did an amazing job with the 49ers defense. And I think we can all agree as well that he's going to be a really good head coach. But this does eliminate the Texans from the Sean Payton head coaching possibility that we were interested in a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I think DeMeco Ryans obviously has a relationship with that Houston organization. He played there for a long time. Feels a little bit like it's not quite the same character that Dan Campbell is, but Dan Campbell played for the Lions. He came back. DeMeco was a much better player than Dan Campbell was when he was playing, because DeMeco was a Pro Bowl caliber inside linebacker. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. But I think it'll be interesting. I definitely think it looks like it's going that way, and he's going to be their head coach. And it feels like the smart. It feels like every year we get further away from, I guess, the early 2000s, late 90s era of football. Every year we get, I guess, like post the 2007 Patriots, it feels like more and more offensive head coaches. And I'd say especially that accelerated with the McVay thing in 2017, when McVay and Shanahan got those jobs and kind of, accelerated those teams' trajectory. Offensive head coaches have been trendy, and rightfully so, because that's, you can keep them for a long time, and you can find the right quarterback, you can build something special. So it's zigging when everyone else is zagging, but I do think DeMeco is a bright enough football mind that it's worth the shot. Like, you can't, sometimes you just got to go with the best football mind out there, even if they're not going to be designing some great offense and they're going to have to outsource for that. But like the Jets did with Robert Saleh, I think that was the right decision for the Jets. And like, not that Dan Campbell played offense, but Dan Campbell he's not exactly a revolutionary offensive mind. He's just kind of he's a football guy, and he can control the locker room. I think they kind of see a similar thing in DeMeco Ryans, and I think it'll be a good spot for him. And I think hopefully he can stick for more than a year, because the Texans have had 3 coaches in 3 years, and I think he will. I think they'll have their guy for a little while here, while they have a young team that's going to try and turn it around in these next few years.
Yeah, I think that, honestly, to use something that you were saying, like when you say that the offensive minds have really been able to accelerate these teams into competition and contention, I think that the Texans recognize that they're a little bit away from that right now. There's no way that bringing in they could bring in the best offensive head coach in the history of the NFL. Probably they're still not going to compete with like the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals, frankly. So I think it's really good on them for bringing in a guy who's going to bring them some stability and hopefully give that locker room a jolt. Get them really excited about playing for the city of Houston and give them a better product than what they've had in the past few years. They're taking steps to get out of this giant hole that they were in when Bill O'Brien left, and they're making it there. So
and when their quarterback became an alleged serial rapist.
Yeah, since they fired Easterby, they've been kind of slowly walking back in the right direction from all of the disastrous moves that were made before that.
Yeah.
I also want to add that I basically agree with all the stuff you guys said, but JJ Watt also made a tweet today with a picture of him and D'Amico in Texans uniforms when they played together. He had just kind of a cryptic image, and then people were speculating that like maybe he would come be like on the coaching staff or something. That'd be
Cool.
kind of cool.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
I wonder how high JJ could like climb up the rungs in this first year as coaching. Or
I
something.
feel like he'd start as one
D-line
one
coach.
of many D-line coaches. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that.
like a D-line coach or like a defensive assistant or
Or if he's buddies with the owner like Jeff Saturday, maybe he's the head coach immediately.
yeah.
That's another way to go.
Immediate defensive coordinator for D'Amico Ryans. Yeah. I was gonna say really quick that I feel like a lot of some of the top head coaches in the NFL currently were like former players. Two names, like you said, Dan Campbell, and then also obviously you think about Mike Vrabel as well, who's been a really good coach. It just seems like some of the younger guys that were former players have stepped in really well with their head coaching jobs and done well. So we can see if D'Amico does this too. And I kind of expect him to take this step with this Texans franchise. Sorry.
So what are the before we move on to the other thing? What are the remaining head coach openings left? It's the Colts, Denver, and Arizona. Is that it? Are those the only three? I think they are now that Houston's going to be filled. I think
Colts,
those
in Arizona. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. Tampa still got their coach. Arizona, no. Washington still got their coach. Yeah. Do you think Washington's going to fire Rivera if they stink it up the first few games next year? But
I thought Rivera was gone this year. I thought he probably should have been. But Arizona and Denver are interesting. We'll see if Peyton ends up in Denver. Apparently, Arizona and Denver are kind of in it for Sean Payton. And the Colts is the longer this thing takes for the Colts, the more I think they're going to just hire Jeff Saturday. And I'm here for it because it'll be hilarious. Jeff Saturday is not an NFL head coach, man.
He's not qualified yet at all.
He is not an NFL head coach, but I think that might be the direction it's heading. Apparently, they're talking to Bieniemy too, but and that, there's a bunch of names they're talking to, but they've done like two or three interviews with Saturday already. Jim Irsay wants a reason to give that thing to Jeff Saturday, and I'm so here for it if it goes that direction. It'll be so funny.
I mean, I feel like it's sad. I feel bad for the players on that roster right now because it looks like that franchise is headed for a little bit of a rebuild. They have so many good young pieces except for quarterback, which they've never been able to solve since
a high enough pick now, though.
Even before that.
So they have a high enough pick to pick quarterback now. Finally, they should if they don't pick quarterback
absolutely
at 4,
do everything they can to make sure that they get one of those top 3 guys at quarterback, which is probably going to happen. But yeah, they need to lock that in and start this rebuild because I mean, you look at their quarterbacks. Other than Luck, it was like Brissett. They had Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan, all like old, except for Brissett.
Rentals, basically.
Yeah. Just a bunch of vets that didn't really work out. But yeah, I guess we can move on from that. Talk about the league offensive coordinator searches. We were just talking about the head coach openings. There's a lot of offensive coordinator openings. I guess I can read them off here. Us, the Ravens, Baltimore, Washington has an offensive coordinator opening. Arizona, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Dallas, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Denver, and Houston are all still searching for an offensive coordinator.
Like a third of the league.
Yeah. I feel like the Ravens are obviously, I think we can say head and shoulders above everybody else for the most, wanted offensive coordinator job. I think the next closest would probably be Arizona.
Maybe I guess Dallas, but it sounds like if McCarthy's calling the plays, that's probably not as great as you'd think. And there's some of these things are not like Carolina, you get an offensive coordinator, but I'm pretty sure Frank Reich's going to call the plays.
Yeah, and some teams are that are waiting on a head coach and an offensive coordinator, for example.
It
depends who they hire, right?
Yeah, if Sean Payton goes to Denver, he's going to be calling the plays. But yeah, there's a lot of openings for teams that are not that attractive. Indianapolis doesn't have a quarterback. Tampa Bay, we have no clue where they're going. Tennessee doesn't really have a quarterback you trust. I mean, that's an okay job, but they don't have any receivers.
Yeah, Tennessee, the only reason you'd be an offensive coordinator there is for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's Greg Roman goes to Tennessee. Yeah. Greg Roman in Tennessee. That'd be they'd be pretty good for 1 year, and
2 years, and then they'd just be awful.
throw it all away in the playoffs. But yeah, I think uh, there's a lot of openings and a lot of names being thrown around. We'll see. I think we think Lamar is going to stay. But even if he doesn't, it's the Ravens is still probably one of the better openings because of all the picks you're going to get for Lamar. But if you have Lamar, for the same reason that Chargers job was so attractive to Kellen Moore, the Ravens job is up there as something that somebody can look as a boost to become a head coach. Because if you have a quarterback like that, you get the opportunity to turn this offense around and make it a more prolific passing offense, and then you can get head coaching looks in a year. That's why we're talking about maybe if Bieniemy it looks to take another offensive coordinator job and he doesn't get a head coach job. It sounds like Baltimore would be the favorites to land Bieniemy if he leaves. We're not sure if he's going to leave. Zach Robinson, the Rams offensive coordinator, the Rams quarterbacks coach, I believe, or was he their pass game coordinator? I don't remember.
Pass game coordinator, and then we had the Seahawks quarterback coach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Rams, Zach Robinson, who we thought was going to the Chargers because of his relationship with Staley, had an interview with the Ravens. So maybe that's the direction they go. But there's going to be a lot of OC turnover across the league, and there's a lot of names out there. But I do think there's more seats than there are prominent names.
Mhm.
So some people are going to be stuck with less than optimal hires. I think
Yeah.
not guys you want to like. I know somebody's going to be hiring that Denver run game coordinator and not feeling too great about it. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do want to say on the Lamar front, I feel like the quicker or maybe when the point comes that we hire an offensive coordinator could be pretty telling about the likelihood of him re-signing.
Yeah.
And who we hire too, because there could be guys that like if we hired a run game guy, it would make a lot of sense that Lamar's probably staying. But you never really know. But
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
don't think I'm gonna be able to read too much into it either way.
Yeah, but we can move on from this. Kind of some smaller things in the NFL news. The salary cap was just announced. $224.8 million is the salary cap for this coming season, which is a record high. Not much of a surprise, though. I guess if we can talk about Stetson Bennett, too, and then we can talk about the refs. But Stetson Bennett was arrested for public intoxication over the weekend. Probably not going to go very high in the draft anyways, but he still is a big name because he's won the national championship the past 2 years with Georgia. But that's just some news there. And then I did want to talk about the refs over the weekend. A lot of people had been saying since these 2 games that the NFL needs to do something about their refs and, make some changes so that games aren't, big time like decided by calls and flags and penalties. So is there really any way that they can like seriously fix this at all?
I gotta be honest, I have never seen a close conference championship game that the fan base of the team that lost hasn't been yelling at the refs. But I think a lot of Bengals fans are upset, and if I was a Ravens, well, I am a Ravens fan, but if this happened, if something like what happened to the Bengals happened to the Ravens, I'm sure I'd be upset. But once I can be objective about it because my team's not involved, the Bengals fans who are upset, it's like, about the unnecessary roughness at the end. That one was clearly the 3rd and 9 that got called off. There was a ref running onto the field and trying to call it off, but nobody noticed it. So I guess you still have to call that off. But there were certainly calls that went the wrong way. But at the same time, the Chiefs had a touchdown wiped off the board on a questionable holding call. They had a pick wiped off the board on a bang pass interference call in the second quarter. There's stuff that goes both ways. I honestly didn't think it was that bad. I actually thought the Niners game was a little worse. Not that the Niners were committing penalties, but they were playing physical and they were getting called for it, which is fine. But I didn't feel like it was being called that way. Both sides. I feel like the Eagles were playing just as physical. I don't think it had much of an impact on the game. The Niners didn't have a quarterback, so they weren't going to win that game anyway. We'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, I don't think the reffing was as much of a problem as it was being made out to be. Sometimes there was some bad calls here and there, but There's always going to be that. There's no way to fix that permanently. But I don't think anything was nearly as egregious as some of the stuff we've been seeing in the NBA recently. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, it happens every weekend in the NFL. It's unfortunate, and basically every league people are yelling about the refs, which is so. If only there was a way to make it totally just like objective and computerized, but we're never ever going to get to that point with how subjective the rules tend to be for a lot of things, and how it's hard. It might be hard. Just no one's perfect. We're not saying the refs have to be perfect, but it seems like unless some drastic change is made, which maybe it will be, but like everyone's just totally fed up with the refs. Like, there's not a single ref that anyone has any respect for anymore. Like, no matter who I see on the staff for coming on for the Ravens game, I always am like, oh fuck, well here we go. Like,
I like Sean
shit
Hockey.
show.
I like Sean Hockey.
Okay, that's nepotism.
Yeah, maybe a little.
But anyway, like I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. I don't have the credentials to really step into that and be like, this is what needs to be changed. But
yeah,
it seems like Gene Steratore is just like smiling in the booth and he's fine with it. So he doesn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really a way to fix this. I mean, there's like small things, like I guess like a training program. I've heard an idea of that for the officials, but it's not like something that you like is going to make anything drastic. It's still like you can't really stop like
the real
bad
solution
calls from happening.
The real solution is pay the refs more. All the best refs now work for Fox and CBS, like Gene Steratore. All these guys who are really good, they go into the booth because they make more money that way. So
it is a part-time job too. So it's
it is a part.
Yeah,
the real solution is get full-time refs, but I don't think the NFL wants to pay for that. But
half
it
them
is
are
an
lawyers.
option.
Half of them are lawyers on the side, which makes
It
sense.
must be
I guess,
nice being Gene Steratore. Just sit up there in the booth, just get paid to say, "Yep."
Yeah.
Yep, that's the right call.
Looked right to me.
The ball clearly touched the ground. We all can see it with our own two eyes.
Yeah. I guess our last thing that we can
Tyler
talk about.
Huntley. Let's go.
Snoop. We don't know that.
Huntley
Burrow
has
Burrow
a
has to
very
drop out
real
first.
chance of being a Pro Bowler this year, with Tua most likely being out.
Lamar.
Herbert's getting surgery, and then Mahomes is in the Super Bowl, obviously. So if Burrow chooses to skip the Pro Bowl, Tyler Huntley will be an official Pro Bowler, having under 1,000 throwing yards and a negative touchdown to interception.
Let's go.
Guys, we're going to get so much for Snoop in a trade when we go into the offseason. Like, who wants Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley for a first-round pick?
I can already see it in my head. If this happens 15 years down the road, my kid's going to walk into the living room and be like, Dad, how was Tyler Huntley a Pro Bowler when he only threw for 900 yards and had a negative touchdown to interception ratio? Like, it's funny that it happened. And I mean, I don't really know how it happened. Did he only get one vote from someone in the media or something like that?
I don't know. My question is Trevor Lawrence. He's an alternate ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
I know.
How does that happen? Hey,
he's just not that good. He's
Pro
not
Bowler.
good at all.
Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley is gonna net the Ravens a first-round pick in the offseason. You better believe it. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, we're gonna demand them to give us a first-round pick because he's a Pro Bowler. You're not getting a Pro Bowl quarterback in a trade, are you?
Give us Trevor Lawrence. Give us Trevor Lawrence. He's not a Pro Bowler. Tyler Huntley is.
Yeah, we can run Lamar and Trevor Lawrence in the backfield at the same time.
Oh, it'd be crazy.
Yeah. But that's about all we have for our news today. We're going to get into our conference championship recap now. We can start with the 49ers versus the Eagles, which is just an absolute murder. Eagles won 31-7. The spread closed at -2.5. So, or it might have been -3. I'm not sure, but the Eagles still won and covered. And I think we can all agree that this game was a big letdown. Like, this was a huge hyped up game, and Brock Purdy immediately gets hurt, tears his UCL. He's not going to need Tommy John, I believe, but he tears his UCL in the first quarter. And then, NFL journeyman Josh Johnson, who's been on 14 NFL teams, steps in and also gets hurt, goes into concussion protocol. and they take him out, and they bring Purdy back in, who can't throw the ball further than 5 yards. So they just like the Eagles defense just knew to play up close on every play. And it was just a very boring game after that Purdy and Johnson injury. And yeah, I don't know. The Eagles definitely seem like a legit team, but they have had an insanely easy road to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is. It is their path has been kind of unprecedentedly, I guess, frictionless. They played what, 4 playoff teams in the regular season. One of them was the Giants, who are not that good.
Twice.
Yeah, who they played twice. One of them was the Dallas, who they played twice, but one time without Dak and one time without Hurts. So neither of those games were really high leverage because one team was at a clear disadvantage. They played Minnesota, who was worse than the Giants.
Not even top 30.
Yeah, not even a top 30 team. We've been over this countless times.
We established this weeks ago.
We established this. Minnesota was not one of the 30 best teams in the league. They played Jacksonville, but that was week 4, when they were, before Jacksonville kind of figured their shit out. And then in the playoffs, they get the Giants again, not a serious matchup, and then they get the Niners, which is absolutely a serious matchup, but literally without a quarterback. I see people online being like, "Oh, their starting quarterback was hurt. They had a quarterback." No. They didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have somebody on the roster it's very, very simple requirements. Well, not simple, but every team has at least a few guys who know the plays and can throw the ball at least 15 yards. They didn't have anybody left that could do that. So they're out here running double toss plays for Christian McCaffrey to jump past the ball 35 yards to literally no one. That was hilarious. I just McCaffrey jumping and throwing a bomb, and I'm like, is McCaffrey going to complete a deep pass? Nope, there was nobody within 20 yards of the football. But yeah, my roommate, who's a Niners fan, I live in Santa Clara, right by the Niners stadium. He was the second Purdy went down, he's like, "You got to be shitting me." It's been the definition of the season for the Niners is their quarterbacks just can't stay healthy. And then Josh Johnson went down, and he was already, he already had given up at that point. Josh Johnson had already, dropped the ball for no reason before halftime to make it 21-7 instead of 14-7 or 14-10. But the Eagles' path has been kind of, and they put up 31 points against a great defense. But again, I feel like that's kind of affected by the quarterback because the defense was playing so tight because they knew the only way we're going to win this game is if we can get a defensive touchdown. So they were playing aggressive is a good thing, but they were playing so kind of irresponsibly aggressive, but they had to because, that was the only way they were going to score is if they made a big play on defense. So it's going to be weird seeing I don't think I've ever seen a team who I'm saying that their first real test comes in the Super Bowl, but I feel like that's what's about to happen with the Eagles.
Yeah, low key. I mean, this was such a disappointment watching Purdy go down because this was going to be such a great matchup. And I mean, yeah, everything you just said basically, like once Purdy went down, the game was basically over. Like, obviously, we didn't know that he couldn't come back, but it was basically over because, I mean, Josh Johnson, fun fact, this is his 4th time on the 49ers. And he just is not going to get it done. Again, the Eagles did put up 31 points against the 49ers' number 1 defense, but, I think the Niners ran like 12 plays in like the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the defense was on the field for the entire game. Like, I'm not going to take anything away from the Niners defense there.
I thought the Niners defense played okay, honestly. I thought
they did, honestly,
fine, yeah.
Especially given the fact that they were blitzing on every play.
Yeah.
Early on, I think they were really looking pretty legitimate, and they got screwed over by that Devontae Smith catch that was not one.
Yeah, I mean,
that set the tone for the game. Just they didn't really have much of a chance from the beginning. I guess the football gods had decided it.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to something we were saying earlier, like it was supposed to be a physical game, and the refs only really let the Eagles be physical. Like, I won't deny that the 49ers were committing a lot of penalties, but yeah, there was some bang bang stuff that really only got called one way.
Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking, the last few weeks about, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo might be ready for the NFC Championship game. Clearly, you're going to keep Purdy in there, but if Jimmy's healthy, that'd be an interesting storyline. If they go back to him, they probably won't. But would have been pretty
Yeah,
nice to have Jimmy Garoppolo out
that
there,
would have
huh?
been great to have Jimmy out there.
It wouldn't have been a huge downgrade or anything.
No,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's had that playoff experience. He's been in the Super
not
Bowl.
great playoff experience. Like he doesn't play very well, but he has been there.
Yeah,
But he made the Super Bowl throwing the ball like 7 times or whatever it was. But yeah.
yeah. I did want to say though, some of the highlights from this game, for both teams, especially the Eagles. I mean, their offensive line played lights out. Lane Johnson and said that he was playing on something torn in his shoulder.
Groin.
Allowed 0
Groin.
pressures. Incredible game. Incredible.
There's a groin and a labrum. He has a shoulder thing and a groin thing. So he's
battling through.
doing crazy. Yep.
Yeah. And then obviously, like we talked about before the game last week, the Eagles pass rush just absolutely dominated this team. Hassan Reddick had an amazing game. I'm still kind of, sad that the Ravens didn't go after him last offseason. We had all been begging for the Ravens to sign this man the past 2 off seasons. First before he went to Carolina, and then we went to Philly. He's been outstanding. And I'm pretty sure on the season now, he has a total of, including playoffs, he has a total of 19 and a half sacks. So he has been incredible for this team.
Yeah. He's a 1A pass rusher. He's elite in every sense. And he got 3 years, 45 million, which is it's a good chunk of change, but it's not what he's worth. He's worth much more than that. And the Eagles looking like they got a steal right now. But to speak on the Eagles O-line for a little bit longer, they were just kind of running the ball at the side. Eric Armstead wasn't. They were basically, where's Javon Kinlaw? Let's run at him. Javon Kinlaw's a fine player, but not that good. And Jason Kelsey and Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, were having their way with him, and they were moving Kinlaw out of the way, and they were just running up that B gap, up off tackle, up and down the field, off the left side, where Kinlaw was for most of the game, and then they shifted Kinlaw and they ran to the right side behind Lane Johnson and Kelsey and who's their right guard? That's going to bother me, but regardless, the Niners defense, has almost no holes, but the Eagles found the one hole and they abused it for the whole game. So credit to them. I did say, as I said, the Eagles are kind of untested, and I do stand by that. But I don't want my words to be misinterpreted as I don't think the Eagles are legit. They're absolutely legit. They just haven't really. It's one of the easier schedules ever going in the Super Bowl. Like they deserve massive credit. They're an elite team. They deserve to be in the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs are a different level than anything they've had to play this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they hold up against that. That's kind of all I was trying to say.
Yeah, they do have an incredible roster. We just haven't, like you said, we haven't seen them against a big tough opponent for a full game, obviously, which kind of sucks. But we all know how good everyone on that team is, so we won't be surprised when they live up to expectations and play a great game against the Chiefs, hopefully in 2 weeks from now. But this
Has anyone seen the opening spread? Sorry to cut into
I've
it.
not.
It opened even, and then it moved to -2 for the Eagles, -2, I think.
Okay, that probably makes sense. But we'll see what it settles at, because
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can. I did want to bring up one more thing for us to just talk about before we move on to the highlight of the show. The Trent Williams thing of him literally body slamming someone onto the ground and the benches clearing was so crazy. So crazy. Those two teams were all chippy all game. There were a lot of fights happening. And that was just, I guess, kind of out of anger, but kind of crazy to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously it is a bad look, but I understand it to an extent. It's a really frustrating way to end your season when you're one of the best players in the league and you're going on this crazy streak. you've got it in your head that you're ready to win the Super Bowl, and at least you're going to be there. But things out of your control just really prevent you from having any chance to do that, and that's really frustrating. Obviously, he shouldn't have done what he did. It started a huge fight, obviously, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever had to hear heard the ref had to say all teams to the bench multiple times into his mic. But I don't think that it's indicative that Trent Williams is a dick or a dirty player or anything, frankly.
Yeah, I think Kittle after the game, bunch of not great reporting being done. Not great reporters after the game asking, like, "Oh, well, what does it feel like to lose a game because you don't have a quarterback?" And they said, "What the fuck do you think it feels like, man?" And that kind of encapsulated not the Warriors, the 49ers for me. It seemed like they were all just like, are you shitting me? We're already on our third string quarterback, and then our third and fourth string quarterbacks have to go down. Like, I almost feel like the guys would have been like, even if Josh Johnson could have played the whole game, they would have been obviously upset and been like, oh man, we can't win because of this. That's frustrating. But I think it takes it to a whole nother level of infuriation for the players when they're sitting there literally without any quarterback. That is like, I can't imagine as a Ravens fan what I'd be sitting there if not only did Snoop go down, but Anthony Brown also went down. And then we're sitting out there with Mark Andrews, like trying to play quarterback.
And this is in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, in the AFC Championship game. They've all those guys worked so hard to get there all year, all for it to be taken away because they do not have a quarterback. They don't have somebody who can throw the ball more than 20 yards. And it's absolutely brutal. And I get the frustration. Obviously, I'm sure he's going to get a hefty fine, but he can afford it. Trent Williams has the money.
Yeah.
Injuries are just very unfortunate. That's really all I got to say on that. Like, it's totally out of their control. Like, how do you tear your UCL as a quarterback? Just in a weird throwing motion, gets hit in the elbow. You can't make that stuff up. And the Niners seem to be cursed, or they have some sort of hex over them at this point. Like, they haven't won a Super Bowl in a long, long time now for their standards. And
usually
they have great teams almost every year, great coaching, but the quarterback position fails them over and over and over again.
All the announcers have been all over Brock Purdy being like, he's able to make this pass with his arm angle because of his baseball background. I think that he took that a little too literally, and then tore his UCL like a pitcher.
Mm-hmm. He could need Tommy John.
I've never seen that. I thought UCL injuries were like from long-standing wear and tear, not like
it was like a bang bang. Like, he was winding up to throw, and like right at the end of the windup or right coming forward, Hassan Reddick slapped his elbow, knocking the ball loose, and it was like his entire UCL must have snapped there, something like that.
They said it tore like fully, which is usually you see pitchers, for example, in a lot of pain. I mean, maybe it's because they just threw like 100-mile-per-hour pitch or whatever, but and it's a long-term wear down of the ligament. But it's
a really rare thing for it to just snap like that.
Yeah, Purdy went over to the sideline, and it didn't even seem like he was in that much pain. I mean, obviously adrenaline and stuff like that, but they literally just wrapped it, and he was on the sideline, like, just
throwing.
Throwing. Like, it's a really odd injury that you don't normally see. I know we were talking about this earlier. I talked to Kove about this in one of our chats about how Big Ben had to get Tommy John, but it wasn't like Kove had told me, it wasn't like a full Tommy John. You don't really see this ever in the NFL. Just because of, you don't throw it like a baseball where you throw it so much, so hard and so fast that your elbow it needs surgery. So kind of crazy thing to see, but yeah.
All right, gentlemen, it is time
for the
highlight.
Yeah.
Before we get into any analysis of this game, I believe we all have something to say. Shall we do it together?
Yeah, sure.
1, 2, 3. Bengals! What happened?
What happened? The Chiefs beat the Bengals 23-20. The spread closed at -1 for the Chiefs after being like +3 towards the Bengals. I think we are all rejoicing right now at what we got to witness yesterday. And And, after all the shit that the Bengals have talked, the whole Burrow head thing, the Cincinnati mayor, talking shit about the Chiefs and saying that Burrow's Patrick Mahomes' father, Eli Apple talking shit to the Bills, and then, acting all cocky. It just seems like this Bengals team talks so much, and all the time they get like, it seems like the past 2 years, obviously they made it to the Super Bowl last year, but then they play the Rams and they get shut up. And just seems like it always backfires on this team. And you do wonder, with the Burrow extension coming up soon, how much, when is the window really going to start closing for this team? Because, they're going to have so many options and so many young guys that are going to want big contracts, and they're not going to be able to sign everybody.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Bengals' future in a little bit, but I'll save that for a few minutes from now. I'll start with just this game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Burrow played fine. He had some big mistakes. The one pick was a perfect ball, but it got batted in a great play by six. I forget his name. The chief safety. Yeah, Brian Cook. It's a great play by him. The other pick was pretty bad. That was a really bad pick. And the Bengals were gifted some opportunities. There was a questionable holding call that brought back the first Pacheco touchdown. There was the Mahomes just out of nowhere dropping the ball for no reason and throwing it backwards.
Yeah.
That was bizarre. I think, the Bengals held up, but defensively they did what they could, but Mahomes is a magician, and on one leg he was managed to pick apart that defense just enough. Yeah, and I think the second they punted away that ball and Sky Moore got it to about the 45 in that fourth quarter there with about 40 seconds left. I think anybody who's watched the Chiefs for the last 5 years knew this game's over. I can't think of a time that Mahomes hasn't come through in a scenario like that where he just needs a field goal. And, people are getting – I thought Joseph Asai had a great game. People are getting on him for the penalty. And I think that's –
2 sacks, I believe.
Yeah. The thing is, the penalty, it wasn't egregious. It was a penalty. It definitely deserved to be called. But at the same – it's like, it would have been a 60-yard field goal if he didn't commit that penalty. Guys, they had 9 seconds left. Does anybody in this call think Mahomes couldn't get them 10 yards in one play to get them a shorter field goal? I don't think so.
Andy Reid's going to draw up a play that's going to.
They're gonna find Mahomes 15 would have found a way. He literally just sprinted with one leg to get 12 yards to get them there. We don't think he can find a way to get 9 yards in the next 8 seconds before to get a closer field goal. I think they would have had it anyway. But yeah, the Bengals are an interesting spot in the offseason. I'll let you guys go, and then I'll get to where I think they're going to go in the future. But they'll still be right in the thick of things next year, or at least they should be. And the Chiefs, move on to kind of cement what this current run is as a dynasty in the Super Bowl. If they win a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls in 4 years, made 3, 5 AFC Championship games in 5 years. Yeah, I think that's firmly a dynasty that is still running. So, Mahomes doing that without his top 3 receivers, throwing to MVS and Sky Moore and whatever else he was working with out there in the second half on one leg was wildly impressive. And I think hopefully there's always going to be someone on the internet being like, is Joe Burrow actually QB1? Is Josh Allen actually QB1? Anyone with a brain knows it's Mahomes. It's Mahomes. It will always be Mahomes. He has no flaws. Once every few years, he gets a little mechanically whack, and then Andy Reid has to reel him in after a 2-week bad stretch. But that's happened twice in his career. He's the best football player I've ever seen, and I hate it because he's in the AFC, and it's going to, ruin chances for the Ravens for a while, or not ruin, but make it much harder. But yeah, he's the best football player I've ever seen, and that was, it wasn't, the numbers weren't ridiculous, but given the circumstances, that was a vintage performance from Mahomes.
Yeah, that was pretty disgusting. One leg, three top receivers out, as you said. You would think he would rely really heavily on Kelsey, but he certainly didn't over rely on him at any point. he really heavily leaned on MVS, which is not what I would have thought was going to happen.
No.
But it worked. And I think before the game, like Tony Romo was saying, I think that him not scrambling as much and sticking in the pocket to make these throws might actually help him on a lot of plays. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's probably bullshit. Like that's not going to work. Mahomes is a scrambler. He's a creator. He wants to be out there moving around in the pocket or outside of the pocket to find these people downfield. But it really did help him on a lot of plays. He was making like some check downs that he probably just wouldn't have made before that went for a lot of yards. I mean, they have a guy in Pacheco that he can catch the ball 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and turn it into 15 yards or whatever after breaking 3 tackles. I mean, he is a fantastic weapon. He had some great plays last night. Their defense looked fine. They sacked Burrow good a hell of times. I don't know the exact
Chris
number.
Jones had a great game.
Yeah, Chris Jones played
He had
great.
that huge third down and long sack.
Obviously, it sucks that they lost L'Jarius Sneed so early in the game, their top corner.
T. Higgins had his way yesterday.
But, they managed to do enough. And they managed to do enough that Mahomes had a chance to win the game, which is always the situation that they want to be in. So credit to them. And I'm just happy that the Bengals lost, frankly. Fuck Eli Apple.
Yeah, Kelsey after the game put Cincinnati in their place with that quote that he delivered on the stage.
You jabroni.
Yeah, he said, "No, you'll roll and shut your mouth" or something like that.
Yeah,
but that about sums up how I was feeling when the Bengals when that kick went through the uprights. I was so happy to just see Burrow. I still can't believe they showed Joseph Osai like 10 or 15 separate times,
weeping
like
on the side.
His shirt was like and his teammates just kept coming one by one to console the guy, and I'm like, all right, we know that he maybe 5 times. It's
like
fine.
let him go. Like
did y'all see the clip of did y'all see the clip though? For
Jermaine Pratt.
Jermaine Pratt yelling at him. Yeah.
Just yelling at him.
He's like, "This is my last year. Why would you hit the quarterback?"
Jermaine Pratt, by the way, got toasted on so many option routes in the middle of the field. Jermaine Pratt did not have a good game. Joseph Osai had a fantastic game, -1 play. Just because it was the play at the end doesn't mean it's the play that necessarily cost them. Jermaine Pratt had a much worse game than Joseph Osai. Some of those Bengals need to they could be better teammates, man. Joseph Osai's sitting there crying. Yeah, we can have somebody go sit with that guy for a little while. Like, what are we letting him cry by himself for? It's just
and he also his leg had a very weird movement on after the tackle. He hyperextended it. I'm like, so he's in probably some pretty big pain in many more ways than one. I feel bad for the guy. But on the topic of the Bengals and the Chiefs, I mean, the Chiefs did it like they always do. It seems like maybe last year was a bit of an exception. They kind of sold that lead, which this time they weren't gonna finish off the choke job, I guess. But I don't know. The Bengals looked like they were, pretty much on a similar plane to the Chiefs. There were a lot of moments where I felt like the Chiefs could have ended the game or at least had a really good chance to put it away. Like after that pick when they got no points, and then allowed the Bengals to drive down. If they got 7 there, it would have been really a huge swing. And also when that 4th and 6 double coverage bomb to Jamar Chase happened, it's like, and then the T. Higgins bomb, like those examples, it's like you feel like the Bengals are so close to being essentially out of the game, and then they just pull it out. I gotta respect them. They don't seem to quit when the moment is too big, but that's why Burrow has gotten this far this many times. But
I would say though that does discount them being on the same plane as the Chiefs. I know that they've won 3 times in a row, but I would not say that the Bengals had one of their worst days ever or anything yesterday. Like the Chiefs made a lot of mistakes, and they were significantly more impactful on the game than most of the mistakes that the Bengals made, and the Bengals still lost. Like they still
had a ton of injuries as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
The Mahomes fumbling in midfield, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they got shit on or anything, but
I do want to real quick. I found this tweet here from a few hours ago, And we do use PFF a lot, but this is kind of embarrassing on PFF's part. Apparently Joe Burrow had a higher grade than Patrick Mahomes yesterday. Joe Burrow's rating was 86.6, while Patrick Mahomes' was 71.2.
How is the gap
The
that
problem
big?
with PFF is they're grading people based on assignments that they don't know. Like they don't know what the play was. They don't know what the coach wanted the player to do. They're grading people based on what they think these guys were supposed to be doing, not based on what they were actually supposed to be doing. So if it's a weird cover two look where somebody's actually they think it's cover two, he's supposed to be here. But what if it was a cover two with a weird little trick in there, or an outside linebacker doing something different than he would like traditionally be thought of doing? PFF doesn't take any of that into account. So PFF can be an interesting tool, but the grades are done by, college students who aren't ball knowers, or they don't have armies of ball knowers or people who have like played at the NFL level. And then
Yeah.
they get approved by someone. They get submit for review and they get it out in the next day. There's especially in like the regular season when it's like there's so many games and they just have so many people grading. The grades are not a very precise tool of measuring how well people are playing.
The stats are better.
Yeah.
Also, Joe Burrow, according to PFF, only had one single turnover-worthy play while having 2 interceptions.
Well, that's probably true. The one was a perfect ball.
Nah, bro. Threw it into double coverage multiple times. Those are turnover-worthy plays.
I disagree.
Mahomes does that a lot.
I thought Burrow played fine. I thought Burrow played well actually. But he didn't play as well as Mahomes. That's for sure.
So, I guess I'll just say this before we can get into kind of the offseason part, but I have the complete opposite view on Joe Burrow. He threw 2 picks and he has all these elite weapons and he still can't get it done against a defense that loses their top corner and was dealing with a lot of injuries. This dude's supposed to be the second best quarterback in the league. He's not. He's played okay, but if you're going to be the second best quarterback in the league, you have to win games like that when you have that many opportunities to win the game and not throw 2 interceptions, one being in the 4th quarter during crunch time, throwing it into double coverage. I don't care if it was a good throw. He threw it in double coverage, got tipped, and interception. So, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both had good days. I know Jack was saying T. Higgins had his way. He had that big touchdown catch where he jumped over 2 Chiefs guys, caught the ball, went in for a touchdown. And Jamar Chase played well as expected, but,
I have a question. Would you consider that a turnover-wortady play for Burrow when he threw it to T. Higgins in double coverage and he caught it?
I didn't think that was really a good throw. I think he overthrew it. I think T. Higgins made a really athletic play, and
yeah, that's why he threw it there because he threw it where only T. Higgins could get it. That's the idea.
It was a bad
the back shoulder throw.
I'm just interesting. It's just a comparison of that one.
But no, I Burrow, as much as he has the advantage on the outside weapons yesterday, the best defensive player in football was winning in half a second every single snap of that game and getting pressured directly in his face almost every play. So I thought Burrow played valiantly given the state of that offensive line and the state of Chris Jones just getting in his face every single play and Frank Clark beating their guys off the edge every single play. And I thought Burrow was doing a good job getting the ball out, making some plays happen. He had a few big plays with his leg. I thought Burrow had a pretty good game. It wasn't great. It wasn't perfect, but he had the one pick was inexcusable. The one pick was one of his worst throws all year. It looked like one of those throws against Pittsburgh in Week 1 that was just it's just kind of like I don't know how you can make that decision in that big of a moment. But Burrow, Mahomes also just dropped the ball. He literally just dropped it. He just dropped it behind him and got recovered. So mistakes like that are going to happen to everyone every once in a while. But I thought Burrow had a solid game, and I think he's clearly their franchise guy. He's about to get the bag in the offseason, but we can move on to that.
I did just want to say all time. I do want to go on the Burrow hate again, but still yet to have a playoff game with more than 2 touchdowns. So yeah, just wanted to make that clear. He's got a 0.1 better passer rating in the playoffs than Kirk Cousins. So, yeah, overrated. But yeah, we can move on to the Bengals offseason now. Where do they go from here? Obviously, they don't have to sign all their guys to extensions yet, but it seems like Burrow's going to get his extension in the offseason. Obviously the draft, we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, but when it comes to, re-signing guys and maybe what free agent positions they might want to look towards, what are we thinking for the Bengals?
Yeah, so I would feel they obviously played the Chiefs very close. And they've, in these past 2 AFC Championship games, both of these teams have scored 47 points, and it looks like something that could be a rivalry for years to come. I would feel confident in that if I was as confident in the Brown family and Mike Brown as I am in the Hunt family running the Chiefs. Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, historically has been relatively cheap, and that's, it's a salary cap league, so that's you can still win with that. However, they're definitely going to pay Joe Burrow a crazy amount of guaranteed money. My guess would be similar to what Deshaun Watson got, if not more guaranteed money. And, all these owners are billionaires, but there's levels to it. There's the Bishottis and the Mike Browns, there's these billionaires. And then there's like the Stan Kroenkes of the world who are super billionaires who putting $230 million in escrow is nothing to them, right? Putting like a 200 plus million, $250 million in escrow for the Bengals ownership is a serious task, and they're going to do it. They're definitely going to do it, but that's going to hamstring them literally financially, not like against the cap. Literally financially, it's going to hamstring them to what they're able to afford to guarantee other players. I'm sure they'll break their tradition of not doing that for Burrow, and I think they're going to do it for Chase as well because of how explosive that combination has been. So that's going to be 300 plus million of guaranteed money between those two that they're shelling out over the next 2 seasons, which is 300 million in escrow accounts. And some of this stuff that I'm talking about, Brett Coleman talked about on Stay Hot with Theo and them, and they talked about this kind of the actual financials of it. But the Bengals historically have not liked to guarantee deals outside of 1 year. Even this offseason, when they paid their offensive linemen, like they paid Lael Collins and Ted Karras and Alex Cappa, all of them had 1.5 years guaranteed money. So once Burrow's on the books for a huge number and Chase is on the books for a huge number, it's going to be really financially burdensome for them to keep any of their other elite players. I think Higgins is out of there either this offseason or next offseason, because I don't think they're going to want to pay him what he wants in guaranteed money, because he's going to get $100+ million on a deal, because he's absolutely worth that given the wide receiver market. Jesse Bates is probably gone. The Bengals never keep, unless it's a quarterback, they almost never keep their elite players after their rookie deal. They'll tag them, but they won't guarantee more than 1 or 2 years on that deal. And Jesse Bates is worth that, so he's probably going to be gone. So I think the Bengals will be contending next year, and maybe even the year after that. While Burrow's still not quite all the way into his extension yet, that'll be like a little bit on his 5th-year option. But I think long view of this team, I'm really curious if ownership is going to change their philosophy, or if the philosophy doesn't matter and they literally just can't afford to guarantee some of these players deals, and it's going to be kind of a weird roster of 2 super expensive players, and then kind of trying to find players that they don't have to give big guarantees to. So I'll be curious to see where that goes. But that the actual financials of it, the actual money, not just the salary cap, is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there too. I think the big name that you're worried about for Bengals for the offseason is definitely Jesse Bates, because he's probably their best, or one of their best defensive players at the safety position. But he took the franchise tag and didn't really want to take it either. I'm pretty sure he was willing to sit out, ended up not sitting out. Definitely not going to take the franchise tag again this year. So you most likely will be seeing Jesse Bates leave the Bengals and go somewhere else. And he will be a big name in the free agency pool coming up in a few weeks here.
Yeah.
And then also, before we wrap up with the Bengals and the Chiefs, I did want to say, how do we feel about saying Mahomes is already top 10 all time as a quarterback?
Shit, man, he might be. I it's the after LeBron won his first ring, people didn't hesitate to say he's top 10. People. We weren't obviously alive, but Mike was being called Black Jesus before he won any finals. He was being called the greatest. He got a statue saying he was the greatest ever after 1992. Um, which he had won 3 more championships and 2 more MVPs after that. So I think I'm ready to say he's the best I've ever seen. And honestly, if I'm doing it, I think if he retired now, he's a Hall of Famer.
Mhm.
And I think I'd probably have him top 10. I did a top 10 list 2 years ago on my PJ Tucker Hype House TikTok page. It was partially joking. I said Joe Flacco was the greatest quarterback of all time, but I had Mahomes 10 then, and that was after he won his first Super Bowl and had been to his second. And I don't know. I don't think it's crazy to have him. I'd probably have him top 10 now. If I said you right now, whose career is more impressive, uh, Mahomes or who's borderline top 10? Ben Roethlisberger?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's close. Like it's close. I might go Mahomes.
he's got more
Yeah.
MVPs than
One
him.
of those guys that won like 1 or 2 Super Bowls, or even like somebody that won had a lot of success, but wasn't as necessarily individually successful. Like some people might say Terry Bradshaw's top 10. I'd definitely take Mahomes over Terry Bradshaw.
Bradshaw, Aikman, all those
Yeah.
guys. I'd definitely take Mahomes.
Staubach,
Bart Starr.
How about like Drew Brees or something? Like that's kind of an interesting one because his accolades aren't that impressive, but his stats are like very.
I think Brees is the Mendoza line. That's where I cut off Mahomes. That's where it's. If I think Mahomes is behind Brees, the
I
names
think
are obviously
Mahomes will definitely pass Breeze. He just needs to keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But
He's
yeah,
the
I can agree
all-time
with that.
numbers. He needs
I
the-
have Breeze maybe around like 6,
7,
7-ish as an individual quarterback. So I would say I guess I put Mahomes between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say the only names I'm for sure having ahead of him for now are, Brady, Manning, Montana, Breeze. I guess if you're going really old, Unitas, but I don't like putting those kinds of names in it because I don't know. I don't know what to tell you about them, and probably Marino still, right? Something like that. But when you
Yeah.
get to the Big Bens, the Steve Youngs
Steve
of the
Youngs.
world, yeah,
I would
I
probably
don't.
still take Steve Young over him.
I'd
Put
probably
Steve
lean
Young
Steve
and
Young.
Rogers over him, but
Yeah, Rogers. Sorry, I forgot about Rogers. Rogers is firmly in that too, as well.
Yeah.
That wasn't meant as disrespect to Rogers. I just forgot the name. But yeah, once you get Steve Young, Big Ben, John Elway, probably I'd still give it to Elway, Brett Favre, names like that. You're getting like, okay, maybe, maybe.
yeah, he is what you call generational, and we are lucky to have the opportunity to be able to watch this guy's hopefully his entire career. But yeah, that's about all for
one more thing on that though. I'd like to personally thank the Cincinnati Bengals. Us as our little group, we were big Mahomes fans when he was coming out, not because we thought he was going to be great or anything. We just thought he had a funny name and he sounded funny when he talked. Our friend Jason picked him in fantasy when we knew he wasn't going to play, and it was a big joke. And I picked him in fantasy the next year, and I had a jersey before he played any games. And then he became a big rival of the Ravens in the AFC, so we hated him. So I'm going to personally thank the Ravens. Sorry, not the Ravens. Personally thank the Bengals for allowing us to root for this man again, because it is fun rooting for Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to lie.
He does a lot of good things and wins a lot of games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know if we're gonna root for him next week, but or next game. But
I don't really have a rooting interest next game personally.
I don't really
I'm just
care,
hoping for a good
honestly.
game. Hoping for a
Yeah.
good game.
The Super Bowl is going to start at 12:30 at night for me, so yeah, I just hope it's exciting.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
that's about
That late
it.
in Cancun?
Yeah, he's in Cancun.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. But that about wraps it up for our recap for the conference championship. Do we have a Nick Miller question of the day?
We do have a Nick Miller question of the
Ooh.
day.
Let's go.
We're avoiding giving the rights to the podcast fully to Nick Miller yet again. So this is a Ravens themed question.
Oh,
Who has the Ravens record for rushing yards in a single game? Bonus points if you can get the exact number of yards
easy, bro.
correct
In a game.
That's
in
easy.
a game.
I don't have the exact number, but I think I have the first.
I think I got the number.
I don't know the answer either, so I'm gonna write down. He sent me the invisible ink.
I'm ready.
All right. I have my answer as well.
I have my answer.
Okay. Zach can go first.
Jamal Lewis, 276 yards.
Okay.
200 something, I think.
I'll go next. It is definitely Jamal Lewis. I said he had 295 yards because I think Adrian Peterson has the record with 296.
Okay, Kobe.
Wait, no.
Yeah, I said Jamal Lewis as well. I said 297.
All right.
So we'll see.
We all said Jamal Lewis. I said 253. I think I lowballed it now that you guys are saying it.
Yeah.
The answer is Jamal Lewis, and
Okay.
it is 295 yards.
Let's fucking go,
Oh, he
baby.
didn't
Tyler
hit it
Bumsy
on
did
the
You
not.
said
dot.
296.
Exactly.
Is that what you
No,
said?
I said 295.
He hit it on the
Wow,
dot.
you got it right.
I said
Got it on the
295 because
dot.
Adrian Peterson has the record with 296.
296, yeah.
That's
Wow.
impressive. That's a double point for Bombsy there.
Thank
That's
you.
a big point grab in the
Everyone
scores
got one at least.
and the scores that I have not been keeping track of. I'm gonna have to go back and watch all these videos so we can find
Yeah.
we can find the scores. But yeah, it's a big win for Bombsy there.
Let's go.
All
I guess that
right.
means I got to do the sign off. Let's go. Thank you for watching the Bird Rights podcast. Yeah, fuck you, Zach. Keep an eye out for our next video. We will definitely be making a Super Bowl preview in the coming days, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.